Those Days with the Monsters, Part 5. Somehow Kirrel's claws couldn't seem to reach the record button. His mind reeled. He'd asked for one hazard at a time, but what he'd heard suggested the Cuman's homeworld was a Class 3 death world, at least. Fatal cold and fatal heat. Fatal droughts and fatal floods. The sheer temperature and weather instability was mind-boggling. Worse, there were places where it went from fatal cold to fatal heat, never changing from fatal drought, and Cumans had lived there long before they could even alter atmospheric temperature, even long before they had handheld cooling apparatuses. Something called a goby, the captain had said. Kirrel didn't understand that one. It wasn't in the lexicon, but the captain had promised him it was the name of a place and he didn't have to understand it. According to the captain, most of the crew came from a place on the hotter end of the spectrum, and mostly from a dry area. The captain said at those temperatures a dry area was more comfortable than a wet one, because Cumans cooled themselves using evaporation. Kirrel was not convinced. A few times he had thanked the captain for the information and reached to record, but then the captain had recalled some other horrifying aspect of the planet, such as the supervolcanoes still showing significant activity, such as the vast amount of motion of the planet's crust and the earthquakes it created, such as monsoons and, horrifyingly, something called a tornado that could snatch Cumans right out of their homes.
So, your Earth is a death world. Category 3, at least. Temperature and natural disaster hazards are classed separately.
Kirrel didn't think he'd sleep at all that night. The idea of living on a planet where the very ground was moving inexorably to annihilation in the molten bath of the planet's mantle horrified him. The captain had also mentioned something called a sinkhole, but had refused to elaborate, saying that Kirrel had enough to think about. All this had done was solidify Kirrel's intention to never, under any circumstances, visit the Cuman's Earth. With a deep breath, his frills bright red, Kirrel finally hit the button.
Kirrel Nakta, liaison to the Cumans, report 6. I don't know how the Cumans survived this long. I really don't. Their planet is actively volcanic. The captain says in some places volcanism is the only source of energy for creatures in the area. He did make sure to add that Cumans don't live in those areas, but that's not much comfort, considering all the places they do live. Full deserts, wetlands, places you can't farm because of permafrost, oceans with tiny islands hammered by massive storms. They have whirlwinds they call tornadoes that can just pull Cumans off the ground and throw them around until they die. Fires, floods, and volcanism. Don't forget the volcanism.
He groaned, closing both eyelids.
Kicksnicks, how did they ever make it? And the captain says that's not the worst part of it. He says there's poison and predators, and damn it, I would have believed him if he said there were sea monsters too.
Depends on your definition of sea monster. The captain was still in the room, but Kirrel had been trying to ignore it. We do have giant sea creatures, but they rarely come to the surface. He had that teeth-bared look on his face again, the one that meant amusement.
You see?
Kirrel gestured in exasperation to the captain.
They don't even understand what's wrong with that statement.
Well, most of the bad ones are extinct now. Most of them we had a hand in. Kirrel's claws flailed for a moment as he attempted to express the sheer extent of the wrongness of that statement, in spite of the fact that his mouth seemed to have temporarily stopped working. Finally, he managed to settle his frills, even if he had to close both eyelids again to do so.
Do you mind, Captain? I'm a cargo jockey trying to sound like a bureaucrat, and you're making it hard.
He sighed.
I'd love to just let you make the report, but that would be very irresponsible of me as liaison, and I don't know. You Cumans love saying terrifying things abruptly, and I don't know how the department would react to some of this, so would you mind letting me do the talking?
Fair enough. I'm more of an action guy anyway. I don't like sitting around waiting. If the heist, Kirrel's frills flared around his neck, flushing a brilliant crimson as he hastily hit the stop recording and delete buttons.
Captain!
He shrieked.
Do not! You do not say that in one of my reports. Are you insane?
The captain snorted, a sound Kirrel's translator quickly determined was either smugness or amusement. Given the Cuman's wide, teeth-baring grimace, it seemed likely to be amusement, but Kirrel wasn't quite sure. The recording was a wreck anyway. This gives you a chance to start over.
I don't believe that's why you said it.
Kirrel felt rather proud of himself for being able to detect a Cuman's falsehood. He had very little experience with them after all. Maybe not. Maybe I just like red. Kirrel paused.
You see red?
Oh yeah, definitely. You should see Smee. He's a tetrachromat. He says he can see 100 different shades of black. Kirrel's head spun.
When did you find time on a Class 3 Death World to develop that kind of colour vision?
His own species could detect the difference between purple, red, fuchsia, and orange for the purpose of reading each other's frills, but that was about it. Someone in his species had said there was a lighter fuchsia for mild curiosity, but Kirrel doubted it. I don't really have a good answer for that, but we can definitely read your mood ring there.
I don't understand. What's a mood ring?
The captain waved his hand a bit. Don't worry about it. Human reference. Sorry. By the way, we should teach you how to pronounce the H sound soon. You'll need it. Kirrel sighed. Humans really were distractible.
Why will I need it?
Well, when you meet Happy.
Can't I just let the translator speak for me?
Well, maybe that'll work. But I still want to teach you to pronounce the H soon. Some species that can't do your K might end up calling us humans, and then where would we be? Amusement. Kirrel didn't understand, but the captain seemed to be entertained by the idea of being called a human. If it's amusing, why would it be a problem?
Wait, slow down a bit. How many colours can you see?
The captain frowned, thinking. I don't know for sure. You'd have to talk to Doc about that. It's a lot, though. I'd say thousands, if not more. Kirrel's mind spun in circles.
What do you even need that for? To determine exactly what shade the molten rock from your volcanism is? It'll still kill you regardless.
I think it's more to detect one shade of brown trying to hide in another. Lions and such, you know, stealth predators. After another moment of involuntary flailing, Kirrel closed both eyelids and took a deep breath.
Captain, please. I need to submit a report today and this isn't helping. I need some space to think.
Sure thing. The captain walked to the door, an odd look on his face. Sympathy. Sympathy? Why was the captain feeling sympathetic? I needed some space when I found out most of you'd breathe hydrogen. It was an interesting discovery. I'll give you some room to... Bright red flooded Kirrel's quarters, as well as the hall outside. A harsh screech rang out, then another. Some kind of alarm? The captain jumped, his eyes glittering, and switched on what looked like a portable headset. Sleepy, sit rep. Starboard about 0.5 light years and closing fast. Thought they'd get the jump on us, probably. So not friendlies. Go wake up Bashful. I'll get Happy. The captain grabbed Kirrel and pulled him towards the door. Come on, liaison. Get a look at him, and tell us what we're working with. And that is how Kirrel found himself the first of his species to ever see a Tizix attack ship leave FTL jump.